All right, you filthy Neanderthals. It's time to dust off your starter jackets, rip off those tearaways, and blow into your game cartridges. I'm Sam Blanford.
I'm Pat Sellers.
I'm Sean Kelly, and we wish it was the 90s. And much like the 90s, certainly for New Zealanders, this episode recap of X-Men 97 is weeks, if not months late. Delayed. Get used to that, dear listeners, if you're still with us at all, because we've all got toddlers, and 'tis the season for pass the parcel germs. But yeah, we're back, and we thought we'd cash in on the X-Men 97 excitement by putting this out at least a month after it's finished, when it's been absolutely scrutinised and pulled apart by massive X-Men nerds. So we're here to give you a really low-level gloss over of what we remember happening, having not returned to it since, with incomplete and incomprehensible notes of what I thought was a pretty good finale.
I do remember thinking it was good. That was about it.
We got It's just Tolerance's Extinction Part 1, 2, and 3. We'll go through it. We'll go through what we do remember and talk about it. We'll have a few general thoughts at the end, and maybe if Sam remembers, he'll have questions. I know that much.
Your recap is going to be very important here, Sean.
All right. And I just want the listeners to know that this is entirely 100% my recap, and definitely not pulled from Wikipedia, which probably pulls from some other wiki, which probably pulls from IMDb. This is just all pure Wheeler.
Me and Sam's will be interesting then, because our recollection will be based on your recap you're about to do.
That's awesome. So we get the UN reveals to the world that Professor X is alive with some footage. Is that right? Was that in this episode?
Anyway, why are you asking us?
Yeah. Anyway, so which has incited your classic anti-mutant protests outside the school. Cable explains to the X-Men that the Genosha massacre is an absolute point in time that can't be changed. We might come back to that. That was a bit of an interesting thing. And Bastion's using it to start a 300-year war that will lead to the enslavement of mutants in a human utopia. Not the worst for the normies. Cyclops, Jean, and Cable go on a little family trip to Harmony, Pennsylvania, where they learn that Bastion is a human-machine hybrid who was conceived after his father was infected by the time-traveling sentinel, the pink and purple beast that is Nimrod. Members of OZT, or Operation Zero Tolerance, express concern over the massacre and ask Dr. Cooper to monitor Bastion, who explains to her how he is turning humans into prime sentinels using Trask, using Sinister's techno-organic virus, the same thing that he infected baby Cable with. And so prime sentinels are activated around the world, which are basically just humans with a very visible virus, and they get the morph bags under the eyes, and they attack mutants around the world. They burn down the school. So in retaliation, Dr. Cooper, horrified, releases Magneto, who goes on a bit of a mission to create a worldwide technological blackout in his sexy black undies. It kills thousands of people and shuts down all the Prime Sentinels. Sort of finish with Wolverine fearing that Magneto has declared war, and then Xavier crash lands in his alien Shi'ar bird suit thing and summons the X-Men. That's my summary and no one else's. Thoughts?
I had Wikipedia open. It was word for word. Sean was like, "Yeah, I'll try and paraphrase."
Paraphrased. I added some extra adjectives for Nimrod.
That's the teacher coming out in UA. You're like, this sounds like it's been plagiarized. Like you could smell it. There were smell powers. Tim's got them.
So at the end, that's where Xavier comes back. We haven't seen him apart from when he's in space getting married in this series yet.
Yeah,
my
being a
last
kinky weirdo.
my last
Having a real normal one.
note just says bloody Chuck.
My last note says Charlie X coming back sucks.
Oh, that's good. We were on the same page. I thought you loved him.
No, he sucks. I think we'll talk about him when we recap the whole season because I've got thoughts about Charlie X.
This is basically a setup episode, right? So who is Hank? He ends up. Who shows up from his past in this one?
It's the reporter.
Yeah, what's the reporter's name?
Trish Tilby.
But she's is she working against the X-Men at some point?
Oh, he gets a bit titchy with her during the season because her reporting might be a little bit paint a few bad pictures. You know, like they record the one iron gene argument and.
Because I remember Meg saying like, "I got to talk to Hank about his taste in women."
That's right.
Because he was hot for Tilby.
Yeah. Speaking of Meg, I do enjoy when Cable's explaining they can't. Before he starts to explain that he can't fix it, Meg goes to Cable, "Why the heck didn't you stop Genosha?" And One Eye goes, "Take a seat, Logan." "Oh, Daddy's home."
At the start, speaking of Psych, I've come around on him a little bit this series. That episode 5, I believe. You know, the one that everyone got up in arms about, how great it was. He started a bit of a turnaround there. At the start of this episode, he asks the professor for some kind of tips, like almost like parenting tips. I was like, mate, you are asking the wrong person. And I thought
you can tell they've tried real hard, the writers, to make Cyclops better.
In the fighting scenes, he's way better.
Yeah, I reckon that gives him a big blow up as the new animation. New animation makes his powers look really mint.
Yeah, sliding around and special landings and
yeah,
it is actually quite cool. You don't even see that much in the comics. To showcase his skills in the comics, they usually just talk about his like incredible understanding of geometry and more like laser eye off like 17 corners to knock someone's gun out of their hand or something.
I don't know. The Summers family picnic was a bit vomit-inducing, if you ask me.
There were some real cheesy lines.
Don't screw with the Summers.
In that scene with Cable, Beast talks that they talk about a nexus point or something, and Beast mentions was it Kumartage? Is that what it's called, Pat?
Kumartage, yeah.
That's the Doctor Strange magic place,
training ground
in Nepal or whatever. That could be wrong.
Yeah,
possibly. So
yeah. I mean, it made it seem like it was Nepal in the movie. I don't actually know what they said it was. Maybe that weird thing where they're like, kind of like this.
Yeah, they don't want to. You got to be really careful these days, you know. Oh yeah, I had that question. So they've got that footage. The UN has that footage of Professor X, and I'm like, how did they get footage of Professor X's inauguration all the way from the other side of the galaxy? How did the UN get that?
I blame Mojo.
No, well, there is like Captain America and all that in this world, so maybe there's a shield or sword operation in this universe that's feeding it back.
Well, you started saying when you started saying shield, I thought you were going to say Shi'ar for a second there.
Yeah, I might have just said nonsense. I'll be saying about 5 more words in this podcast, by the way. I'm operating off 0 sleep with a newborn in the house. I got the confidence booster when I came on here, and Sam goes, "Whoa, you look like you aged about 6 years."
Is it canon that Magneto has a Jean Valjean like tattoo?
What? Oh, you mean
like
his
tattoo
that
with
number?
numbers?
That's the tattoo that Jews got in the Holocaust. That's their like prison number.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Not that I don't think Jean Valjean had 24601 tattooed on him, but it was
Is that what
something
number
similar.
Mags had?
No, it was something very similar though. Made me think of Les Mis. Real good Cable calling out One Eye for being overprotective.
You say something like a little late to be the overprotective father, isn't it? Or something like that. Also, I noticed this probably means more to you, Pat, but I reckon the guy who's voicing Cable, who used to voice Gambit in the original series, is definitely doing a Josh Brolin impersonation.
Yeah, I kind of thought the same thing, but they released a making of, which I watched, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. And he kind of does, he actually kind of sounds quite a lot like how he's making Cable speak. But it shows him in the booth, he's doing heaps of stuff with his face to make his voice sound slightly different than it is. Apparently he's a singer or something, eh?
While we're talking about the Nazis and the Holocaust, I enjoyed Sinister just being sinister in that conversation in Bastion's lair or wherever they are, and I think it's Cooper who makes a reference to Dr. Mengele, and Sinister replies with, "I knew Mengele. He settled on being a Nazi pup." Just hinting at Sinister has a history. Sinister was a Nazi for a while. In the comic books, at least. You know, experimenting on people, that's his jazz. There's a couple other things I thought were interesting. There's this thing where, obviously, Maddie died in the Genosha massacre, and it's made clear that Jean inherited all of her memories, which is very convenient certainly for One Eye. But just to sort of, like, take on the mother role. I've got a note here that says Bastion's plan is tapping into Trump enthusiasts. Real MAGA vibes.
Tell me about Bastion.
So Bastion's like a late 90s villain who is just a sentinel. And he's part of a crossover event in X-Men called Operation Zero Tolerance. It's not widely regarded as being very good, but not much from particularly the late 90s is. But he also makes a comeback in maybe like mid to late 2000s that I at least think's pretty cool. And that's when he does like the merging with the techno-organic virus, and he ends up with those big demonic wings that he gets later. And you find out about the Nimrod and something else as well. That's part of what makes him who he is. I don't know if it's like the phalanx or something weird like that. But yeah, he's a bit of a, like, he's 90s. That's about it, really. He's not an ongoing deal in X-Men continuity. What else have I got in there?
Part 2.
Meg slicing up the Sentinels on his fall back from the when he gets like taken into the sky and he's falling back to the mansion. He's just slicing his way down. And I do enjoy the scene afterwards where I think Tilby's trying to kill Rogue, and Meg busts in and goes. I don't know what the exchange is. We goes, "Lady, I got 6 reasons why," and pops all his claws, and then Nightcrawler turns up with 2 swords in hands, 1 sword in tail. "No, my friend, 9. and that was just that whole action sequence.
That was good.
The action's good. It's really good.
The action is fantastic.
What did you guys think of? I don't know if you remember or not, but there's a scene where Nightcrawler teleports Meg and a Sentinel out of the mansion, and you actually get to see from like the inside of the teleportation, and it's sort of like their faces just go all real wonky, and then they pop out somewhere else.
It has very good memories of that.
Yeah. Those stretched faces and stuff, eh? My favourite bit was, do you remember the bit when Bob said that the human sentinels had wolf eyes? That didn't get enough laugh when he said it the first time. That was brilliant. That's my favourite bit from the episode.
All right, part 2.
There was also at the very end when Cooper's giving her speech about what she saw on Genosha and all the things that Bastion had said to her about how if you make it too devastating, people don't even think about it, blah, blah, blah. She finished with the Magneto was right. And we talked about that in the Genosha episode. That's mint. Magneto is right. Anyway, part 2. Go to my summary that I wrote. So everyone's a bit cagey that Professor X is back, particularly One Eye, but they sort of soon focus on stopping Bastion and trying to convince Magneto to reverse his MacGuffin EMP. Magneto pulls Asteroid M out of the ocean or wherever it was and just chucks it on back in space, choosing to leave Earth without power, reject the dream, and offers the X-Men to join him. This is actually from the first Asteroid M in the comic books, where he offers them to join them. There's a few character swaps from the original story. We'll come to that. But in this thing, anyway, Rogue and Roberto join him. Not really surprised that Rogue did. And probably Roberto's probably the next. He's just a kid as well, right? And he's seen some shit in the last couple of months. Yeah. Didn't really talk about in the last episode how he showed his full powers. I thought that was pretty mint. But anyway, the rest of the X-Men return to their old base on Muir Island, the home of the presumably deceased Moira McTaggart and Bad Guy Bar.
2.0, baby.
And then they split into 2 teams. Cyclops takes Blue Team to Asteroid M to confront Magneto. Storm and Jean take Gold Team to take on Bastion on the Galapagos Islands. Massive callback to X-Men 91, like the comic book, where they split into Blue and Gold teams. Cyclops one leader, Storm the other. So what happens? Beast and Forge create a collar that can block Bastion's technopathy, to take away his control of the Sentinels. The Gold Team battles a whole bunch of Bastion-controlled Sentinels, as well as Sinister, who takes control of Cable's mind to overpower Jean. She sends a psychic message to Cyclops that maybe they're not ready or something or other. On Asteroid M, Xavier Off tries to take control of Mag's mind but gets blocked. And then we finally have in visuals what we've all been thinking. Why is Wolverine ever sent to fight Magneto when Magneto rips the adamantium from his skeleton, a la the very now famous storyline Fatal Attractions?
I thought that was it for Meg.
Well, I read Fatal Attractions. Have you read it, Pat?
No, I haven't. But I have seen that image before. And yeah, when it was in the episode, because I'd looked it up in the past. I was googling it, but yeah, I thought it looked almost like you could tell exactly like that sort of shot.
Almost certainly, both of us would have owned a Fatal Attractions X-Men trading card at some. I reckon I've still got mine.
Oh yeah.
What do I got here? nice to have Storm back. Feels like she's been gone for a while. I really like Forge. I just like all the additions actually. Like having Cable sort of part of the team, Forge, Nightcrawler, and Sunspot are all pretty mint.
Speaking of Forge, I'm pretty sure Forge and Hank did a hongi at some point.
It did look like that, eh?
I'm pretty sure that they touched noses and foreheads and breathed the breath of life. Or sneezed. I think that that actually happened. There was a bit of action going on.
Yeah, I just looked that up because I'm like, is that a Native American thing as well?
I think that's why Forge did it. But Hank, being a learned man of himself.
But I mean, the first thing that came up was an Eskimo kiss, and I don't know if we're allowed to talk about that anymore. But it says non.
Start bringing up those fucking lollies soon.
Yeah.
It's right at the start of it's like in the first 5 minutes.
I forgot, but as soon as you mentioned it, I was like, yeah, that I do remember that.
That really stuck out to me. But Pat put it on our chat. The best 2 words spoken to Chuck in the entire.
Look, I even forgot about this part.
Who said it? It was Magneto, eh?
Yeah.
When he gags him.
How I have waited to say these 2 words to you. Shut up.
If he had added Meg on the end there. Shut up, Meg.
Just going back a little bit. When Magneto turned up to the school, it quite clearly looked like there was a Aurora Borealis in the background, which probably deserved more mention. The scene out there is very reminiscent of. Do you remember Colossus, Pat? Sam? I know Pat will. So in the comics, it's Illyana, who's his little sister's funeral, that Magneto gate crashes to offer everyone to go to Asteroid M. And in that scene, Colossus is the one who goes, and he gives Prof a mint serve about his dream and how he ruined Colossus' life by taking him away from Soviet Russia.
Fuck you, Chuck.
But obviously in this one, Rogue goes instead of Colossus with Sunspot.
Did you? I saw there was a tartan quilt snuck its way back into the episode, which I thought was quite good. And I don't know if it's this episode or the next, but someone definitely picks Chuck up in that little baby hold again, which made me think. I actually watched a couple episodes of Malcolm in the Middle the other day, and did you either of you watch that?
Not extensively.
Yep. And Malcolm was in this like special class, and do you know? Do you know? Do you remember what they were called, Pat?
No.
It was like they got called the Crailborns. And I've just got here Chuck equals Crailborn.
There's the one like he becomes like the leader, eh?
The Crailborn leader. All these real nerdy kids, all these wieners get called Crailborns. So he'll be now known as Crailborn.
Good.
I don't think it's very. I think
familiar.
It's not very PC that, but anyway,
that's all right. Excuse me, on air burp for Sam to edit out. Sam, what did you think of the X-Men jumping into their retro outfits?
So this was my question. So you mentioned something about Gold Team, and Jean had like a weird gold masquerade ball mask on. Is that like a thing from the comics? Like when she's the leader of the Gold Team, she wears that like porno mask.
Actually, when they do the blue and gold teams, they actually wear the costumes that you're more familiar with in this episode they wear their costumes that are like prior to the format to the 90s. It's like 80s and back. So One Eye has the same costume without like the weird leg belts and the chest belt thing, and he wears the sock over his head. Storm's in a swimsuit. Jean's in a mini dress.
So would have that been her being referred to as, what was her name? What's Jean's
Marvel Girl.
Marvel Girl? Did Marvel Girl, was she known for having a gold mask or not?
In the 60s, when the X-Men first came out, what was that?
Pat's gone live.
I'm trying to share the screen. It shows the costumes. But it's not letting me.
If I click watch stream, will it?
Everyone come and watch the stream of us.
Does that work?
Oh, bro.
But those aren't the costumes.
What is that it? Because what is Morph wearing here?
That's not it. That's someone's like, that's some sort of fan art you've brought up.
That's disappointing because Morph is wearing a cape.
click on the first. Oh, it's gone.
Stream has ended. Cricket noise, just like this podcast.
Yeah, that's really showing our rust. For the people that only listen to our X-Men podcast, we haven't done one in a month.
I reckon we should have made this a live podcast just so we can see our live viewership. Are we off the mic?
People are watching.
It would just be our bot that's recording us.
As I was saying, so in the 60s, when comics were a little bit more sexist, that the X-Men all wore like kind of like the costume that Forge has, just that classic sort of yellow and blue thing. And then Jean, as the only girl on the team, decides to design them all new costumes. So Cyclops gets the blue condom suit with the yellow undies, and she goes for the very fashionable 60s mini dress with the big. They all still have to wear masks and stuff because they've got secret identities in the 60s. But yeah, I think I would have preferred if they went for like modern costumes and updated rather than retro. But it's all right. I quite like Wolverine's brown and tan get up.
Anything Meg's good. Except when he gets his adamantium ripped out of him.
We'll come back to that at the end, I think. A couple of things. I noticed they've really pushed hard that Storm and Jean consider themselves sisters, which is something we didn't really see in the original series. But there's a scene where they're like going to take on Bastion, and one of them says, "Let them mind your weather, sister." And then Storm says, "And weather your mind." They're really hamming that in. And Storm is, man. So is Forge. I like the pairing. I also like it when morphs into the Hulk, but instead of saying Hulk smash, he goes morph smash.
Yeah, Morph's powers really confuse me.
So this is talked about a lot online, and my understanding is he can take on the physical attributes, but he's not going to be as strong as the Hulk. But I think if you rewatch, you'd notice Jean quite often like puts a little telekinetic thing or whatever around him that maybe protects him a little bit. But yeah, he can't create I-beams, but he can clearly change his density to pretty extreme levels to get as big as the Hulk, or like it appears he could like be a chair or whatever.
Yeah, it seems like they've really pumped up his tires just to kind of keep up with the team, but they've like almost gone too far where he can just like be anyone and have their powers.
Yeah. Couple other bits. So for unknown reasons, Cyclops gives Cable a new costume, even though he's still got his current one. And then he says the line that made all of the nerds everywhere have an exgasm when he says, "What did you expect? Black leather?" Bugging off the 2000s X-Men movies. Who wore black leather?
Did you have an exgasm?
Did I?
Yeah.
A little bit. A little bit. The other bit that's mint is when they get onto Asteroid M and I can't remember what Magneto says, but it's kind of like straight into the action. And Meg just goes, "Oh, good. We're skipping the blabbering." And then when the Fatal Attractions part happens, Meg says to Magneto after he stabs him, "Been in a lot of wars, bub. The brave always die first." And if you remember correctly, I think the last episode of season 1, where the X-Men go off to fight the Sentinels and Mags is at the mansion with that bandaging around his ribcage, they take off and he's standing by watching with his mullet waving in the wind, and he goes, "You're all fools. Heroic fools. The brave are always the first to die." I'm enjoying those kinds of callbacks. That's every note I've written, so if you guys have got nothing, you can soldier on.
Yeah, no, I'm ready for.
You took all my notes.
I'm ready for part 3.
Yeah, let's roll on.
I reckon we got a cannonball sighting too, by the way, in part 3. I'm surprised Pat didn't mention it.
I didn't mention there was quite a few cameos in the last one. Polaris, Rachel Grey / Summers, heaps of villains. I can't believe you didn't write that down, Pat. When Bastion's talking to all his
It has no notes. he has 0 notes.
How do you find that hard to believe?
Pat, how did you not remember that Dr. Doom is on one of those screens? He's your favourite character.
No, I don't know why I was saying. Oh yeah, like I still don't remember even now that you were telling me that.
That's definitely a cannonball man over Dr. Doom.
Is that fair, Pat?
No, to be incorrect, but I just have a soft spot. Like Cannonball's my weird character that I whip. Everyone kind of whips Dr. Doom.
Yeah, Dr. Doom
is a better character.
So part 3, Wolverine's in bad shape. He's had the adamantium stripped from his bones. If it wasn't for his healing factor, he'd be dead. Xavier takes control of Mags, restores the power to the Earth, which gives Magneto like a stroke or something. And then Jean, connecting to the cosmic power of the Phoenix, rises from the ashes. And one of the greatest, like, temporary, you can have all the powers just to get out of this pickle situations. She absolutely wrecks Sinister, places the collar on Bastion, so the Prime Sentinels get their humanity back, just like that, and pulls all of Sinister's mutant augmentations. So I don't know if you know this, Sam, but Sinister's not a mutant, but through his years of genetic playing around, he's given himself mutant genes. So when she pulls that, he goes all old and wrinkly, and that frees Cable, who's now only got one arm. I've got a lot of questions about that. The X-Men fight to prevent Bastion from crashing Asteroid M into Earth to cause a Extinction level event, but it still plummets after the US government, under the watchful eye of Iron Man and Captain America, unleash the Magneto protocols.
They should have got Professor Frink to help them do this part.
And the Magneto protocols appear to just be bombing Asteroid M. And anyway, with Xavier's help, Magneto regains his consciousness. There's a lot going on between those two that we can come back to. And he sends the asteroid into space, but then it explodes, and most of the X-Men are presumed dead. There's a little bit that happens after that. We get the 6 months later, and Bishop arrives from the future and tells Forge the X-Men they're not lost where, but rather when, trapped in time. And we see Cyclops and Jean are in 3960 AD in a classic dystopian future where they encounter Mother Ascani and the young Nathan, and Rogue, Nightcrawler, Beast, Charlie X, and Mags are in ancient Egypt, 3000 BC, where they meet in Sabanur. There's also a mid-credit scene, but maybe we'll come back to that. I think let's lay off talking about what happens after the asteroid disappears and just focus on the episode first, and then we can come back to that other stuff because I could probably lead into a conversation about what's to come. First thing I had written down was one of the most classic openings, well, not even openings, but you want to do a scene during the war, you put on Turn, Turn, Turn by the Byrds. If they had stayed in that scene, I think we probably would have heard Creedence Clearwater next.
Bastian is a great villain.
Shockingly.
Yeah, very good.
Speaking of Bastion, did you love his really rude dig at the prof? He says, "A dream as crippled as its dreamer."
That whole the prof and Mags in that like rising water, that was weird. Very odd.
It was weird, and it was clearly trying to play into the strength of their friendship and that they're like brothers and stuff like that. But it kind of just came across as like, were they secret lovers?
So that are they supposed to be in Mags's brain or something, or his mind or something at that point?
And the water represents him losing control or whatever, and you get that scene of like people who love him, and it's a boat, and you can see Rogue, but it's also got his kids on it: Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, and Polaris. I just, on that really quickly, heaps of nerds over-analysing, going, well, technically, the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver aren't actually his kids anymore because it got retconned and they're not even mutants and this blah, 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 and we'll find out about that next season. I'm like, no, they're not going to do that. They're just going to make them his kids because that's better. And the show only takes what's good from or takes even bad things from the comics and makes them good, like Bastion.
Bastion's bad in the comics.
Oh yeah, he's very unpopular. Just didn't do much. He has one good moment. I don't know if you've read, Pat, the whole like Messiah complex, Second Coming stuff, Utopia and that sort of era.
Like I've read Second Coming, but not the other two.
Anyway, it's good, and he's the main villain in that, and he's real good in that. But in Operation Zero Tolerance, he's just a bit. It's just not that good. But it's just not a good time for comics, so that's probably why.
So in part 2, Rogue essentially abandons the X-Men for Magneto, and is very, very quickly forgiven when she returns in part 3.
Feels that way.
What's that?
Feels that way. Yep.
Yeah. I thought there was no like backlash or anything.
I guess everything's moving at breakneck speed. So, but yeah, because as soon as Mags gets dealt with, they've got to deal with Bastion, right? And she probably hates Bastion the most because he killed her precious sugar. The old Cajun.
I revel that they mug off Jubilee even more in these episodes. I don't know who it was. I think it was Bastion was like, "What will you do, child? Slay me like the 4th of July?"
Yeah, that's meant. I like it when Rogue just goes full fucking apeshit at Bastion as well. That's meant. What else happens? We get some random cameos like Black Panther Pat. Is Pat asleep?
Almost. Don't throw any questions to me.
It doesn't bode well for our listeners if you can't stay awake on the episode.
Hey, we're just here to entertain you here, Bob.
Also, listener.
I don't think there's too much to talk about more from the episode, but I think there is some stuff to talk about as what we think or what you think might come up
There's just a couple of things I wanted to mention. They keep talking about Bastion truly is the future incarnate, and I just don't even understand what that means. So
Well,
that
the
was a
fact
bit
that
weird.
he's
does he like somehow also like become Nimrod? Like a
Yeah, it's
precursor to one?
unclear.
Is that what they're trying to say? But then he's like
I
meant
think
to be.
so.
I don't know. What if his-
Yeah, I don't. The only other thing that I had that I thought was mint that probably means nothing to you, but when Cyclops like just gives Bastion the full eye beam, it's like 6 feet in girth, and is exactly like his special move on the Marvel vs. Capcom, which they've done a few times for some characters. Yeah, that's I don't have much else to say really. There's no good quotes because Meg's in a coma the whole episode.
This dystopian future that One Eye and Jean will end up at. That seems real spacey. Well, it gives a real Star Wars vibe.
No,
Does this anything to do with like they had like I more remember this from like collecting cards when I was a kid. They had like alter egos when they were like traveling through space or some shit. It was like Red and Slim or something.
That's it, mate. The
Is that what
Adventures
they're
of
going for?
Cyclops and Phoenix, Red and Slim. Yeah, so in that storyline, they go to the future. They don't. It's not them, but their minds get put into some other bodies from the future who look just like them. So they don't have powers or anything, but they literally do it to raise Cable in the future. So they're obviously going to play off that a little bit. The most interesting thing about that scene, at least for the main X-Men nerd here, is Mother Ascani, who is. You must remember the Days of Future Past episodes, Sam, where Bishop gets sent back in time to stop Nimrod from creating some bad future or whatever. So in that future, that's like a parallel timeline or whatever, however timelines work. Because they stop it, it becomes a parallel timeline. In that timeline, Cyclops and Jean don't have Nathan. They have a daughter named Rachel.
I see this. Rachel Summers.
And she's Mother Ascani. So she only exists in one timeline in the comics. So that's her. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out.
So we're thinking there possibly is going to be 2 storylines, one involving Apocalypse.
I think 3. 3 all involving Apocalypse. Because you've got
he'll be in the desolate future as well.
He runs the desolate future. That's why he's Cable's arch enemy. And then obviously in the past, in Sub-Nur is Apocalypse.
A young version of Apocalypse. Yep. I don't know, there could be a young version of him.
Yeah, he's ancient Egyptian.
What?
He's the first mutant.
Nutty.
Usually. There's some other ones that might be the first mutant, but he's, for all intents and purposes, he's the first mutant. And then the post-credit stinger is Apocalypse in the ashes of Genosha picking up the Gambit card and talking about so much death, which is obviously a reference to one of his 4 horsemen being Death. And there is credence in the comics for Gambit being one of Apocalypse's horsemen. So it seems highly likely that he's going to resurrect Gambit and make him one of his peppies.
So who came up with all this lore, like the fact that Apocalypse is this in Sub-Nur? Is it Bob Layton?
Who's Bob Layton?
I don't know. He's the American comic book artist, writer, and editor.
Well, I couldn't tell you when the lore of him being ancient Egyptian comes in, but he gets introduced in the 80s as X Factor villain, and that's when Archangel or Angel becomes Archangel. and then Apocalypse is around quite a bit, but Apocalypse really rises to fame in 1995's Age of Apocalypse.
Okay, I see. No, created by Louise Simonson and Jackson Geiss, absolute geniuses.
Yeah, that's the X Factor part. But yeah, the story is for Apocalypse. He's an ancient Egyptian, first mutant, has powers, but is a bit of an outcast because of it, and has tough life, blah blah blah, and encounters these stupid alien things that are way too important to Marvel Comics called the Celestials. And he uses
that sounds
you don't.
terrible.
Oh, they
I think
suck.
you and Pat have mugged them off before.
They get retconned to be like the reason so much shit exists in the world. Anyway, who cares about that? But he uses their technology to keep himself alive and steal other mutants' powers and all this sort of stuff. And he goes into these deep sleeps to regenerate, and then he comes back when he's ready and goes for the survival of the fittest and that sort of stuff. What I really liked, which I think probably would play into Pat's love of X-Men, is when
I throw it to Pat, whatever you do, he's asleep.
When he was talking about all this death, all this blah blah blah, he called the mutants as children. And that's more of a more recent revelation that Apocalypse, his whole survival of the fittest thing has been more around getting mutants ready to not necessarily take over the world, but just to be the supreme sort of beings or whatever. It's quite interesting. The whole Krakoan era, which me and Pat read until a little bit until the end when it got a bit shit. Apocalypse, they did a lot of work with Apocalypse to make him more interesting than just a Darwinistic supervillain.
All right, I've got a few questions, I think, to round us off. I just want quick fire your thoughts. Yes or no?
It'll be good being quick. Yeah, I'll be real fast. What?
Yes or no?
Sleep.
Oh, yes or no answer is good. Yes.
Will we see Remy again?
Yes.
Yes.
Are we going to enter the Age of Apocalypse at some point?
I hope so.
Oh, yes, and I hope so. Yeah, I like the sound of Age of Apocalypse. Are Magneto and Chuck done, or are they going to be working together again?
They might just be friends. I don't think they have a relationship like that in the previous episode.
I know. I'm actually, more questions. I'll talk about Magneto at the end and just the general, if we do some really quick general thoughts, because I've got some thoughts about Magneto.
This is the end, Bob. So hit us with what you've got.
Is that the end of your questions?
That's the end of my questions.
There was so much to like about this season. But realistically, end of episode 1, we hear about the will and testament of Charles Xavier. By the end of episode 5, Magneto's been captured and is off the board for a while. And when he comes back, he's back to being a villain. I would have really enjoyed having him lead the X-Men for more than a couple of episodes. That was really, really mint. I could have done with just a whole season or 2 of Cyclops and Magneto sort of vying for leadership, no Professor X in sight, and just seeing how that shit goes rather than it being done so quick. The other stuff that happens quick, I don't really care. But I really enjoyed Mags being a, quote, good guy.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there, but not being a big fan. And I gather probably the internet is probably more on your side than on my side. But IMDb 8.9 out of 10, Rotten Tomatoes 99%. You cannot that was a very, very successful season, and you cannot sneeze at those results. Yes, it felt rushed, and even I felt it was rushed, but shit, it was just action packed. good character development, and there's so much stuff they can go and do in season 2 because there's fucking 60 years of comics to go through.
Yeah, they've only and what they've done that's real good is they've taken some mediocre storylines and made them awesome. So what happens when they tap into the good stuff? Hopefully they do Age of Apocalypse because that's mint. Because Magneto leads the X-Men and it's just grouse.
I'm keen for that.
One thing we didn't mention, I read this post, is the writer who got sacked, Bo DeMayo, came out and said that scene where Morph is trying to get Meg to pull through and he morphs into Jean to try and tell him, you know, I love you, Logan, come out of it or whatever. He came out and said that's actually Morph just professing his love for Meg. Which will definitely ruffle the feathers of the weird group of X-Men fans that hate wokeness. Very counterintuitive.
There's only a few of them.
Yeah. But yeah, yeah. Got it? Pat's dead? Yeah. I thought Pat wanted...
We need... Hey, do you want me to do your bit?
Did you see Pat's message?
Do my voice.
Nah.
You can do my voice, though, Sam.
Yeah, okay.
I just thought it was got to be mentioned. Big congrats to Bob for conning us into doing this entire series. After the prep for the first episode, we discussed how we weren't going to commit to the series. We'll just do this episode and see what we want to do. And then he opened it with, this is going to be our first in a weekly series covering each episode of the new... And with that, I'm going to sign out before I pass out on my microphone, to be honest. Sorry, boys.
Okay. Let's do your sign out then.
Yeah, let's do the sign out.
Well, let's go home. Plug it back in later.
Let's you and me do it, Bob, because he's gone.
Which part is he supposed to say? He's supposed to say the first part. Yeah.
Nah. Oh, is he?
He's my spot. Mission accomplished, buddy.
Let's go home. Yeah, I think that's it.